Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
And here we go on Tider Insider TV, and here we go on the cover of Sports Illustrated. I tell you what, Alabama is becoming old hat at this. This week, it's Trent Richardson following the Tide's 48-3 win over San Jose State. The cover headline, College Football Opening Statements, Breakout Players and Programs in Week 1. This is Alabama's 5th SI cover in the last year. That's more than any other college or pro team in any sport to be featured on the cover. You remember that old song, I want to be on the cover of Rolling Stone? Well, if you play football at Alabama, you want to be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, and you probably will be. Meanwhile, Alabama defeats San Jose State, as I mentioned, 48-3 in the season opener, and the pollsters keep the Tide #1, and why wouldn't you? The coaches poll released this afternoon. Alabama received 55 of a possible 59 first-place votes. The other 4 went to the Ohio State University. In the AP poll, Alabama's still #1, but the vote actually a little more spread out. Boise getting a lot of respect after that win over Virginia Tech last night. They get 8 first-place votes. That's twice as many as second-place Ohio State, but the Buckeyes do hold on to #2. Rounding out the top 5, TCU. Boise State and TCU in the top 5. It still doesn't look right to me. And Texas got a first-place vote at #5. And with that, we say 1 game, 1 win for the Crimson Tide. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock. Tonight, Diet Pepsi. That's the sound everybody loves. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. We'll break down Bama's blowout win later in the show, but first, we press forward, and we begin tonight with an off-the-field matter. Last week, the NCAA suspended defensive lineman Marcel Darius for 2 games because of attending an agent's party in South Beach earlier this year. Coach Saban originally said that Alabama would ask to get one of those games back, the Penn State game, through appeal, but on Monday he said that's not going to happen and announced that the case was closed.
You know, I said that we would appeal, but when I say things like that, you know, we have to have precedent to appeal. Precedent being some other case, some other circumstance relative to how, you know, penalties are sort of granted. And we don't really feel like we have a good precedent. We feel like, you know, relative to the circumstance, this was pretty fair.
As far as Mark Ingram goes, Coach Saban says he's beginning dry land rehab this week and is listed as day-to-day. Ingram was moving around on the sidelines pretty well last Saturday night, but the coach isn't ready to say when he'll be ready to put on the pads and play in a game.
You can ask me, but I don't know if he'll be able to play in this game. All right, it depends on how he reacts to every day, and nobody really knows how that's going to be. And it would probably be a little bit of a stretch for everything to go perfectly, but that's where it is, and that's all anybody knows right now, so that's all anybody can say.
So we know Alabama will be without one of its best defensive players against Penn State, and a pretty good chance that the Heisman Trophy winner will also not be available, and if he does play, you wonder how much. And this isn't San Jose State. This is Penn State, ranked 18th in the country, one of the most proud and tradition-laden programs in college football history. How does this affect the Tide on Saturday night?
Well, I mean, anytime, as you mentioned, Gary, you lose your maybe the best defensive lineman in the country, maybe the best running back in the country, certainly the heart and soul of the offense in a lot of ways. I think it's going to have an impact. But again, Alabama's recruiting through the years under Nick Saban has taken care of some of those depth issues. They've got a lot of good defensive linemen. We saw that last week. He moved Damian Square over from one end to the other, and he performed well. Andre Billingsley also played some, and several other guys. You look on the offensive side of the ball, Trent Richardson is as good of a backup as there is in the country. Eddie Lacy, we told you last week how talented Eddie Lacy was, what a game he had in terms of production. Now, obviously he had the fumble, but you know, it does hurt you in terms of an experience having that running back, that extra running back going into a game like this.
Good news is we know Darius will be back for the Duke game, and we know as well that if Ingram's listed as day-to-day, if not back this Saturday, he's getting close.
Yeah, and again, Nick Saban talked about it, not necessarily that ruling out the possibility he could play, and it'll be interesting to see.
All right, Bama opened the season with a blowout victory. So did Penn State, 44-14 over Youngstown State. Now this will be the 14th time the two programs have played. Let's talk about the Nittany Lions. They've got a freshman quarterback in Bolden, but I tell you what, he showed some poise, he showed some athleticism, he showed some arm strength. Pretty good debut for him, and a solid debut for Penn State. Now, this was a game for a while. Unlike Alabama and San Jose, Youngstown had some opportunities here, but still, Penn State was the better football team against Youngstown.
Well, yeah,
obviously.
clearly. They've got a lot more athletes than Youngstown State, but as you mentioned, Gary, Youngstown State did have some success. A couple things that jump out at me was the fact that they were 21 of 25 throwing the football, had some success through the air. They gave up the long kickoff return. They were up at one point. This kind of turned the game around in Penn State's favor to open the second half. Penn State did have some problems running the football. They weren't quite as consistent as they normally would be, or you would expect them to be, especially with a running back like Evan Royster. There's been some talk of concern about the Penn State offensive line. And, you know, to be quite honest with you, coming into this game, they're going to need to run the football against Alabama.
All right, Rodney, good analysis. And coming up next on TITV, Alabama lands a commitment from the JUCO ranks. In fact, many consider him the best junior college player in the nation. This guy is he's an impact player, looks like. Plus, we'll be taking your phone calls and getting to your emails. There's the phone number to get in touch with us, 205-348-9882. That's 348-WVUA. Or you can email us at TITV@WVUATV.com. And still to come, the Tide used a number of young players in the victory over San Jose State. We'll break down how they played and much more. But first, a memory from the Penn State series that everyone will recall. It's the most famous one play in the history of Alabama versus Penn State. And there have been some good ones, but this one was the best for Alabama.
19-game win streak, only undefeated team in the country, ranked number 1 in the nation. Alabama ranked number 2. Everything could be hanging on 4th and goal with a half a yard. Bowman, he didn't make it.
More Tider Insider TV in just a moment, but first, time to talk to you about one of my favorite places to eat in Tuscaloosa. Nuke's, 205 University Boulevard East, Nuke's Express Cafe, and notice the Express. They get you in, they get you out, and you'll enjoy the fast service, but more than that, you'll enjoy the great atmosphere and terrific food. I was in there yesterday, as a matter of fact, with former Crimson Tide football player Trent Davidson. We had lunch there. I had the salad and half sandwich combo. The iced tea was incredible. But whether you get a sandwich or one of those California-style pizzas or a salad or soup, everything is fresh and homemade. They've got a beer and wine menu. Of course, they'll take care of all your catering needs. Just call them 758-2455. And don't forget the dessert menu, cakes, brownies, and Rice Krispie treats. That's Nuke's Express Cafe, 205 University Boulevard East in Tuscaloosa. Time now to talk about football recruiting. And as we know, Alabama and Nick Saban and this staff probably do as good a job in all the facets of recruiting, from finding players, evaluating them, recruiting them, making the offers, and then getting them here. And Jesse Williams fits that criteria. This was a young man that just a few years ago nobody had ever heard of. He was in Australia. He's from Aboriginal descent, but he stumbled into football. And I hate too much hype, Rodney. We try not to do this. But this young man, 330 pounds, he moves like a 230-pounder. He's athletic, he's fast, he's light on his feet. Rodney has a chance to come in here and truly make an impact. Plus, he'll enroll in January. Just talk about how big a get this is for the Tide.
Well, I mean, it's huge. And again, last year this time, nobody even knew about Jesse Williams. And he emerged last season in his first year at Arizona Western Community College. And, you know, Gary, you talked about not liking to hype up players, but, you know, to be quite honest with you, it's kind of my job to check around and talk to some coaches in the business. And, you know, and I'm talking about coaches not connected to Alabama, but a lot of these coaches have told me, Gary, when you think about Jesse Williams, you're talking about a guy in terms of talent who is on the level, potentially, of a Marcel Darius, possibly even better.
That's saying a lot. Yeah,
you know, I'm just relaying what they said.
Listen, I watched a little tape on him. You know, I have to wait and see about if he's better than Marcel Darius. But even to be compared to him already shows you the talent of this guy. And you know, obviously, Rodney, you got to have skill players. You got to have playmakers. You know, that's what gets exciting. But in this league, talking about the SEC, you win games up front on the offensive and defensive lines, and you just can't get enough defensive linemen. Quality defensive linemen, I think, are the key to any football team in this conference. Alabama has stockpiled them, and this is the way you continue to stay on top. They helped him get on top, bringing in Terrence Cody and those guys, Darius, and now Jesse Williams can help him stay there.
Yeah, certainly, Gary, you know, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, what else can be said in that regard? I mean, Nick Saban has done a better job probably than anyone else, certainly in the SEC, maybe along with Florida in terms of getting those guys up front offensively and defensively.
All right, up next, we'll look back at the Tide's win over San Jose State. Which player stood out? We'll have that for you. Plus, of course, we'll be getting your phone calls and emails. Again, there's the information on the screen to get in touch with us. Give us a call or send us an email, and we'll talk to you in just a little bit here on the program. Stay with us.